they're singing in English. They're singing in Christ alone. This is the church they're building next door. Massive building with a balcony, 3 stories tall. And then I took this picture from the top. This was all the traffic waiting, all the trucks waiting to cross the border. The whole time I was there, it was a nonstop stream of trucks going across the border. The border's like a couple hundred yards to the right. Bell tower they're building, and then this was going up to the border. Over there on the far left, you can see like a blue shack. That's the border. You drive through there and you're in Uganda. This is the border, so you can see that blue shack right behind. And we weren't supposed to take pictures here. And initially, I got told to stop. And then they saw Baraza, and they knew who he was because he's in and out of the border because of his job. And they were like, "Oh, just do what you want to do." So, not everywhere, but in Western Kenya, clergy wives all wear these blue dresses. They're called mom of the church. That's what they'll call them. So, church moms. So then you can see behind there's the church they're building.
So how long has that church been under construction?
A couple of years, and they're a couple of years away. Their hope, he told me, their hope was to have the roof, to raise the money for the roof this fall and have the roof put on around Christmas. That was his goal. Shoe shine.
It's a boot shine.
Yeah, Nambale again. Then this was in the airport in Kisumu, in the cafe. There was a cat sleeping on the floor inside the cafe, which I thought was fun. Everybody just walked around her. So we went from Nambale back to Kisumu, and then from Kisumu to Nairobi, and then from Nairobi we went to Embu, which is right, you can see, right underneath of Mount Kenya, right in the foothills. Up real high, no mosquitoes, which is great, and cool, dry, and then lots of rice fields. And so again, everywhere we went, it got nicer. So we stayed. This was our second week. And it was funny, the bishop apologized that we had such a crappy hotel. And we were like, "Bishop," I told Martin, I said, "Let me send you my pictures of our lodging in Maseno and you can show him that." And say, no, this is crappy lodging. The hotel is very nice. And see, just got, still the instant hot water shower head, but definitely a class up. Embu is very clean. It's probably the cleanest city in Kenya. I was walking to this supermarket. It's right here, called Naivas. This is the cathedral. So you can just see a lot more wealth, a lot more development, just everything's just nicer, right? Like compared to where we started in Maseno or even Nambale, it's just a step above, right? Several steps above. This is a view from the back looking forward. And I taught a lot more in Embu. And we teach in pairs, one American, one Kenyan. And so I taught in Embu, and then the following week in Chicago with Bishop Joseph Mutungi. That's him, and he's a retired bishop of Machakos. Mandatory clergy retirement in Kenya is 65, and so he retired last year. He's 66, and we taught together. So I didn't get a good picture of this. It's a tree full of purple blossoms, and Katie loves purple. So this is the outside of the church. And then this was all the clergy. And the bishop, sweet guy, very tired, ready for retirement. I connected with this lady. ADHD is a diagnosis that's very rare in Kenya. And somehow it came up at some point, and her son has ADHD. And so for her son to be diagnosed with ADHD, it must mean that it's really bad because it's such a rare diagnosis there. So we connected because I have ADHD, and so we talked a lot about it. And she told me at the end of the week, she said that she appreciated our conversations, that she understood her son, who's in his 20s, a lot better now. A lot of the things that he did that didn't make sense to her, after having met me, they made sense to her. She said, I didn't realize that was ADHD, or that was sort of an acting out of those struggles. Embu grows a lot of coffee, and Kenya grows some of the best coffee in the world, and they export it all. So it's impossible to find good coffee. And Rob does not like tea. And I found a place that had actual Kenyan coffee that was grown in Embu. I don't know how they do it because the cartels control it all and it's usually all exported. But we went, I found this place on Google Maps and it had good reviews on Google, and we get there and it's a hole in the wall on the edge of a slum. And Rob's looking at me like, are you joking? And I looked at him and I was like, it can't be worse than the instant coffee you've been drinking. Like, let's just try. And as you can see from his face, it was fantastic. It was really good. This is where we were, in a slum, on the outside of Embu. So up on the hill you can see Embu, and we're down the hill in the slum. More rice fields. This was rice drying. We were driving back down to Nairobi. You see lots of these flyovers that they've just never finished. This was the ACK, the Anglican Church of Kenya guest house in Nairobi, which was really nice, except it was on the 5th floor with no elevator. And then down the street in Uhuru Park, some Pentecostal churches were having a revival. Just right over here, you can see the lights. And so this is what it sounded like in my hotel room until 11 o'clock at night. You can see the lights flashing. It was a week-long revival that they were doing called Rhema Fest in Uhuru Park. So that was good times. Ruth is the operations director for the ministry. She's a U.S. citizen. She's Kenyan. She's a U.S. citizen. And this is her husband, Sammy. And we were in Nairobi in between stops to go meet with the Archbishop of Kenya. And while we were there, we toured the cathedral. It's a beautiful English-style cathedral. And again, notice the signs with the text to give. It's everywhere. Imagine if we did that here. You'd never hear the end of it. The side altar, again, text to give on the side, the Mary altar. And then I thought this was really interesting. You know, Baden Powell, the founder of Scouting, he lived and died in Kenya. And so actually his house is in Embu, where he lives in Embu. It's a museum, and I wanted to go and couldn't go. We drove by it several times. But in the cathedral, there's this plaque in his memory, in grateful memory of Lord Baden Powell of Gilwell, founder of World Scouting. I can't see there. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Chief Scout of the World from 1920 until his death in Nyeri, Kenya on 8 January 1941. So I thought that was really cool. And then I wish I'd gotten a picture and been able to go into his house in Embu. There we go. Lots of cool artwork in the cathedral. And then this is what it looked like from the outside. And I'm taking this picture from their Children and Youth Center, which has a capacity of 3,000. So this is some of the classrooms look like in the Children and Youth Center. And then this is the Archbishop's home. It's on the State House grounds. So the State House, where the president lives, was where the governor lived when it was a British colony. And so this chapel on the end here was the governor's chapel, and now it's the Archbishop's chapel. And they've since built a road through the State House grounds, so the president lives across the street. And this is what it looks like inside. This is old growth mahogany, so these are solid slabs with no seams, no beautiful little colonial chapel. That's the Archbishop of Kenya, Archbishop Sapit. And he was telling us and explaining to us that right here at this pray-do is where the Lord Governor of Kenya sat with the Bishop of Mombasa and penned a letter to Queen Elizabeth requesting that Kenya be granted independence. So this chapel is a historic monument that's protected by the state. But it's in his house, so you can see his bicycle in the hallway. But how cool is that? That's where the Lord Governor sat to write to the Queen to ask that Kenya be given independence. That was super cool. Took pictures of the floor. Just weird woodworking and architecture nerd. More pictures of the pews. This was the outside. He is super cool, the Archbishop. Very humble, very unassuming. He spent like a month and a half at Nashota House this summer, and he dressed like that the whole time and told all the students that he was Sapit from Kenya. Nothing else. So he hung out, had a great time with the students, and they didn't find out who he was until the night before he left when he preached in chapel, and he put on all of his stuff and was introduced at chapel as the Archbishop of Kenya, and all the students realized they'd been Sapit, their buddy, was the Archbishop of Kenya. And that's just how he is. It's not like he went in there to be undercover or play a joke on them. He's just that way. He's just very unassuming. When he was at Father Rob's church in Wisconsin, they had a church work day, and Rob has pictures of him on his hands and knees pulling weeds. And that's very different for Kenya. It's very different for Kenya. There's very much a sort of social hierarchy in what's expected of somebody in his position, and it's not that you're going to be on your hands and knees and pull weeds. He has a stellar reputation in the country, in a country that's riddled with corruption. He is known for being uncorruptible, and not putting up with it. I could say more, but not when it's recorded. This is my little sister's best friend. I got one night off. The next day, we met with the Archbishop on Friday, and on Saturday, they were all going to a wedding, and Kenyan weddings are an all-day affair. And I didn't want to spend all day long at a wedding, a Kenyan wedding, let alone all day long at a Kenyan wedding for somebody I didn't even know. So I convinced them to cut me loose, and not far from the Archbishop's house in a place called, I just blanked on the name, Kilileshwa, which is an upper middle class neighborhood in Nairobi. Naomi lives with her husband Mark and their daughter Tula. And Naomi was my little sister who's been here, the one whose son we baptized. They're best friends. And so I got to go spend the night with her family, and then most of the day Saturday until they came and got me after the wedding. We went out and had nyama choma, just beef cooked over an open fire. It was amazing. She was really interested in my clericals and stuff, and so she put on all my stuff, and she thought it was hilarious, and Mark, her husband who's sitting in the back, did not find it funny at all, and kept saying, take that off, take that off, take that off. You might get a chance to meet her. Her and her daughter want to come visit next summer, if she can get a visa. Nairobi traffic. We went from Nairobi down to Machakos. So Machakos is in a crater of an extinct volcano that blew its top a long time ago. So this was a volcano, and this is what you call it, in the middle, and it blew out the side of the mountain.
Caldera.
The caldera, thank you. And on a clear day, up from here, you can see 100 miles to the south into Tanzania and look out to Kilimanjaro. My hotel in Machakos, this was the sunrise from my back window. This was morning of. The lady on the end, she is they don't call them the dean, they call them provost of the cathedral. So she's the priest in charge of the cathedral. This was the cathedral in Machakos. This was their original building. We had a service in each, and I preached. This was outside of the old building. And I celebrated too. I got to celebrate Mass according to the Kenyan rite, which was fun. It's very different than ours. It's recognizable, but it's very different. They have a lot more call and responses, where you say something and the congregation says something back. And then they do a really neat thing. I'll show you at the very end. They do a really neat thing to end all their services. Lunar eclipse while I was there. And then we went from Machakos up to Chicago, which you'll see is really close to Embu. So this is Mbere diocese and Embu diocese. And the Mbere and the Embu, they're two different tribes, but they're so close that their languages are mutually intelligible. And then on our way there, we stopped up on the side of the hill overlooking Machakos, where Bishop Mutungi's farm is. And so then this was looking down to the south. It was Bishop Mutungi and his wife, Mama Elizabeth. And then it was hazy, so we couldn't see into Tanzania, but it was pretty. Bougainvillea, big huge wall of driving to our lodging, which was down off the side, out of the foothills, down in the plains where it was so hot that none of us got any sleep. And we stayed in lodging with really goofy stairs. I felt like I was drunk walking down those stairs every day, and I thought I was going to break my neck. They're all different sizes and angles and shapes. And if you don't get enough of an impression here, then this one I think even shows you even better. It was very goofy. This was the conference. More teaching. They were doing group work. I thought this was fun. Instead of having the actual plumbing for the urinal, they have one of those. They just have a faucet, one of those faucets you push that gives a little bit of water. Yeah, I had to take a picture. It's clever engineering. This is called the Imbere Peace Monument. So the Imbere have two clans, and they feud like the Hatfields and the McCoys. And 11 years ago, they decided that they were going to deal with this historic feud once and for all, and they brought in people from around the world to sort of settle this dispute, and an elder from to mediate. That's where we're to mediate, and then an elder from each tribe brought a big rock and put it in this hole, and they buried the beef. And they still feud, but they said anytime it gets too hot, somebody will remind them of the peace monument and the fighting calms down. And that it's not been, the intensity has come way down from what it had been historically. More teaching. This was the thing in the middle. He's not in clericals. This was the Bishop of Mbede. Mount Kenya. The only place on the equator anywhere in the world where there's snow. And then this was our hotel in Embu the night before we left. The Isaac Walton. It's a colonial era hotel. And I thought some of the things on here were funny, like London far, Moscow far, far away. 4,900 feet above sea level, 60 kilometers south of the equator. Let's see, everywhere we went, it got nicer. My backyard at the hotel. And then that was, the Kenyan clergy don't drink, so this was the first time I drank. It was the night before